Well, it's time to take a look at some of our Alaska news for this Thursday morning, and there's quite a bit of it, so let me jump right in. A hearing has been rescheduled for the lawsuit challenging Barrow's new name. As you recall, the people in Barrow voted to revert to a different name, one that allegedly goes back to more of the root of the community, Utqiagvik. However, a lawsuit was filed challenging that name, saying, no, you didn't give enough input from the public, and it's not really what the old name was. The judge has postponed the lawsuit, so now it's going to be rescheduled for January sometime. The accused robber of that credit union down in Anchorage, apparently they knew it was him because in his pocket he had some of the bills, the so-called bait bills that actually have the recorded serial numbers. He had them in his pocket, and the amount in his pocket was almost identical to the amount that was taken from the teller. If you're going to rob a bank, don't you think maybe you ought to put the money someplace before you get caught? According to a new study put out by another huge group of scientists, they're saying that the changes in the Arctic this year was unlike any ever seen. The ice is thinner, there's less ice, the temperatures are warmer, there's more carbon being released. So basically, people who support global warming, here's some more fuel for your fire. The person who interviewed Sergeant Bergdahl and the Army wanted to take his tapes. I don't know if you recall that story. He's an Oscar-winning journalist. He has now won those tapes. The lawsuit's been settled, dropped, whatever. The Army is not going to take those tapes from him. A new therapeutic court has formed in Kenai between the Kinitzai Indian tribe and the state of Alaska that will basically take the felony charges that have to deal with drinking and other substance abuse or child at risk charges, and instead of going through the regular state court system, now it's going to go through this so-called therapeutic court where people can get treatment instead of jail time. Also, the Anchorage police is asking for the public's help in finding a missing man. Apparently his family from the lower 48 called and said, hey, we haven't seen him, and he's homeless and he's not taking his meds. The tax case between the Red Dog Mine and the Northwest Arctic Borough has been delayed after the judge has recused himself. Turns out he went and did some consulting with a fellow that he's like, hey, I want to form part of this group with you. And then he found out later that the guy, one of his clients, is the Northwest Arctic Borough. He's recused himself. This delayed the trial. The Fur Rondy dog race this year has a purse of more than $100,000. Yes, that's the biggest ever. Business leaders in Fairbanks heard from a DOT representative. They talked about everything from the new promotions that they have inside the DOT. It's going to be more based on performance than on longevity. They also talked about snow removal and how it's going. Here in Fairbanks, we've only had about 6 inches, so I'm thinking it's going pretty well. If you are a person who likes food for the holidays, you might want to consider filling your holidays here in Alaska with some shrimp, salmon, oysters, and king crab. And if you're outside Alaska, you might want to ask one of us to send you some. Also, if bacon is more likely on your menu, here's a bacon that won't be, a pig named Bacon in Anchorage, helping patients who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Apparently, the sensory, experience of having a pig is quite helpful. If you are interested in what's going to happen with Alaska Airlines and Virgin America, that merger moving forward, it looks like it's a really good deal for Alaska. You can start booking already now on Virgin America lines, and starting December 19th, you'll be able to start earning miles for Alaska Airlines, and then they're going to make people on the Virgin America plan start moving over into Alaska. A Healy man has been sentenced to 8 years for the death of a woman that he killed in a hit and run. Jitstrin was riding her bike to work when this fellow struck her and then ran and drove away. The ACLU now has sued the Kenai Peninsula over their invocation policy, something that we've talked about before and that we saw coming. A couple of men have been arrested in Alaska for making counterfeit money. Also, a U-Haul that was stolen yesterday in Anchorage was found just a couple of hours later completely empty. It had been rented by the UPS and it had probably a whole bunch of Christmas gifts in it. And now it's empty. Taco King and Giles restaurants have agreed to pay Alaska workers $835,000 in back wages. And a person of interest has been named in a death investigation. Police in Anchorage are looking for Blake Russell McBurney. They think that he might know something about a man who showed up to a hospital with gunshot wounds on Tuesday and then died. University of Alaska Regents have approved moving to a single college of education, but the president of the university reversed course, and instead of saying it should be all grouped at UAF, now believes it should be based at UAS in Juneau. Might have something to do with the outpouring of politicians and other people really, really interested in keeping that school in Juneau. Also, a female pedestrian was struck and killed Tuesday night in Anchorage. I'm not sure how many pedestrians that makes killed this year, but it's a lot. Also, a man was shot multiple times on a Fairbanks street Tuesday night in Fairbanks. The reports of the shots fired came in almost the same time a man showed up at the hospital with multiple gunshot wounds. The 28-year-old is still in care, and no one has been charged. They are asking for the public's assistance if you know anything about that. A Ketchikan boater was found dead after he was reported overdue from a hunting trip. They did find his skiff, and then later on they found his body the next day, actually, without a life jacket on it. This is one of the reasons why every single time I get into a boat, I wear a life jacket. Every single time. I know it's not very fashionable. It does restrict my movement a little bit, but you know what? I'm not a great swimmer. Plus, hello, water in Alaska, pretty cold. The defense attorney has said that finding an untainted jury pool for the Grunwald case is going to be difficult, especially given the fact that it's gotten national attention. The 16-year-old was found dead, and now 5 other teenagers have been accused of his murder. If you are wondering, Alaska ranks 10th for rate of pay for annual in terms of the rest of the states. The Anchorage mayor is asking the federal government for $300 million for the port project. And Haines is the latest community now that is likely to go without a state trooper as budget cuts continue to tighten their staffing. 3 men were charged in connection to a kidnapping and assault case in Anchorage that happened on Tuesday. Fellow had been living in this house with, I think, 5 other people. Woke up on Tuesday morning basically to being tortured. He's like, dude, what are you doing? And I said it was very odd behavior, but when he showed up at the hospital with burns and with bruising and being beaten with a baseball bat, now his roommates are in custody. Also, a surprising Alaska oil lease sale brought some pretty big bids, especially given the low price of oil. I don't know if you heard about it. A radio evangelist based in Alaska was recently filmed down in a Texas mall shouting at the children that were there to visit Santa, telling them that Santa isn't real and their parents were lying to them about the real meaning of Christmas. I'm not really sure how effective that is, but that video has now gone viral. And lastly, if you are living in Alaska, we are getting closer to the days of the return of daylight, and 5 different ways suggested by KTVA for us to celebrate the return of daylight. One is to take part in one of the many bonfires that are happening around town and around the state. Another way is to put on your skates, go outside, enjoy what little daylight we have by skating. Personally, I like to run while we have some daylight. Also, you could go to the Alaska Zoo down there in Anchorage. They've got the Zoo Lights program. And you could also sled. Sledding is a fun thing to do, especially with the kids. Lastly, a suggestion, which is actually a pretty good one. Get out there and watch the sunset. Yeah, seeing the sunset in the middle of the afternoon, kind of weird, but instead of resenting it, celebrate it. That's what we've got for our Alaska News. Coming up here on our commentary today, I'll be talking about a fatherhood issue, cooking with the kids. If you like what I'm doing, please become a supporter. You can either buy a direct subscription, or you can be a supporter, a patron on Patreon. And remember, if you've got a topic for me or a news tip, send it to me by email, steve@radiofreespace.com. Thanks.